All right, hi guys. If y'all can hear me, put where you're from in the chat, and we're gonna get started soon. It seems like we have one more person who's registered who's not here yet, so I'll give them 1 or 2 more minutes to get in, but then I'm gonna start with today's stuff. So if you can hear me, put something in the chat for me to see. Okay, perfect. We can hear you. Okay. So maybe I'll just get started right now. So this is AP Human Geography Q&A study session. Hope you're here to have questions answered. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments, but also in the chat, I have put a link to another AP Hug stream today, which is in almost exactly 2 hours from now at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's about the global economy, and Shreya's hosting that one. So after you watch the stream, go eat some lunch, actually eat something and get some water to drink. And then go watch the stream on the global economy. Learn about some things in Unit 7. It'll be fun. All right. So getting into the content. This is the weekly stream calendar. If you're in other AP classes, I hate how Human Geography and all the Tuesday classes have this graphic messed up. But, that's okay. That's okay. We're not going to be mad at the person who created this. That's okay. All right. So I hope I've given you enough time to look at that, see if you have other AP classes. Also, another useful stream, 8:30 Monday nights. We have our weekly current events. It's interesting to watch. There are 2 or 3 student streamers every week who talk about what's going on in the news, like what's going on in the world, what's the update with coronavirus, all of that sort of stuff. It's kind of interesting if you want to go watch. As always, follow Think Fiveable on Twitter, Insta, YouTube, and TikTok. Yes, go follow Brandon on TikTok, please, at Think Fiveable. So basically, since this is a Q&A stream, last week I went over an FRQ review. I've had trouble getting the replay to upload to the Fiveable website because there's just been so much traffic on Crowdcast and Fiveable and Vimeo and all the services that we use. So I'm trying to get that uploaded as soon as possible. But last week we went over an FRQ, and I had you guys grade it with me. We looked at the scoring rubric, and we talked about what you need to write for FRQs. You guys are going to set the agenda once I get any questions from you. I don't see any yet. So what I do want to do right now is I want to go over the changes to the Human Geography exam. So as you know, or I hope you know, that all AP exams are going to be online this year. They're going to be 45 minutes online. The AP Human Geography exam is going to be Tuesday, May 12th, which is just a week after it was originally going to be, at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So you can do your time zone calculations. Sucks if you live in Asia because you're going to have to take this exam at 3 a.m. in the morning. So hope you don't live in Asia, but or anywhere else internationally. But here's all the time zones. So take note of when you're taking your online 45-minute AP exam. And I want to go over the format a little bit. So if we can scroll down and find Human Geography. As I said, your exams are going to be on May 12th at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And your exam is going to have 2 FRQs. The first one is going to be 25 minutes long, and the second one is going to be 15 minutes long. In between, you're going to have a 5-minute upload period, because to do your FRQs, you have the option to get out a piece of paper and write down your FRQ and then use your phone and take a picture of it. But you also have the option to type out your FRQ. If you've ever used the AP Classroom before with your teachers, you might have noticed that you can type out the FRQ answers. You can go through and see all of the multiple choice. That's kind of what the exam format is going to look like, just without the multiple choice, since it's only going to be FRQ questions. And basically, you can only spend the first 25 minutes on this one. You can only spend the last 15 minutes on this one. You can't go back and forth. So, yeah. Since the first one is longer at 25 minutes, it's worth more of your exam score. It's going to be 55%, and then the shorter one is going to be 45% of your score. So that determines whether you get a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Nobody's sure how the grading is going to look yet for the FRQs. Nobody's sure how anything is even going to be for these FRQs. But I wanted to mainly focus on this section right here. Oh, except it highlighted everything. The question descriptions. So basically, this is the most information that we get about the FRQs right here. So the first longer one that takes 25 minutes, it's going to have 2 stimuli on it, which means it's going to have 2 charts, 2 pictures, 2 maps, or maybe a combination of them. And with this first FRQ, you're going to be asked to use these 2 maps, or these 2 charts, or maybe a chart and a map, or 2 pictures, compare them. What you're going to be asked to do is look at them and either compare them, describe what's happening in the picture, explain a concept. Maybe you might have to look at a map and you might see that some part of the Democratic Republic of Congo is shaded, or you might see some other countries are shaded, which will be labeled for you. You don't have to memorize every country in the world for the exam. It's helpful to know them, though, and where they are, but like you don't have to memorize every single country and where it is. So if you're given a map, which you probably will be, you'll be asked to analyze the map. So there's not going to be a Unit 1 specific FRQ with like your diffusion, your looking at maps, scales of analysis, the 5 themes of geography. You're not just going to have an FRQ on that. The College Board has never chosen to make an FRQ on that, and I don't see why they would this year. But what you can get with the Unit 1 and the FRQ is you can get that you're going to have to analyze the stimulus, which is like the image, the map, the chart with the data. You're going to be asked to analyze that, which you could use Unit 1 skills to do. And you can include Unit 1 skills and vocab words in your responses. They're just not going to ask you about them, most likely. And then FRQ2, the shorter one that's 15 minutes, is going to ask you to describe, explain, or apply geographic concepts to only one stimulus. You're only going to have 1 data, 1 image, 1 map. You're probably not going to be asked to compare the map to anything or the chart because you don't have any other data to compare it to. I mean, if you know what I'm saying. So basically, what's on the exam, you probably already know that what's on this exam is only going to be Units 1 through 5, which is your first unit about just the geography of the world, its nature and perspectives. Unit 2 is about population and migration. Unit 3 is culture. Unit 4 is political geography, and Unit 5 is agriculture. So those are the things that they can test you on. And they're probably only going to ask you questions about Units 2, 3, 4, and 5. But you're probably going to get like a stimulus for a question that's a map, or that is a chart that you're going to have to analyze using different scales of analysis there. I'm sorry, I just made this text bigger so you can maybe actually read it. Didn't realize that I did that. And then what's not on the exam, you're not going to be asked about the urban geography. You're not going to be asked to analyze different city models. You're not going to be asked to know what a megacity is. You're not going to be asked like, what's the difference between London and Moscow? You're not going to be asked about big cities. And then what's not on the exam, Unit 7 is also not on the exam. So you're not going to be asked about the global economy like the stream later today is. Check out Shreya's stream. It's something that's not going to be on the exam, but it's useful to learn for your future in AP classes. And Unit 7 is a pretty interesting topic too. So Unit 7, you're not going to have development models. You're not going to have development theories. You're not going to have like GDP, GNI. You're not going to have any of that stuff on the exam. So I hope that you guys understand like the changes to the AP exam. Also, the makeup test date and time is going to be June 1st at 2 p.m. Eastern. But honestly, I recommend just doing the normal testing date. They're really trying to save the makeup test date for anybody who's like violently ill with the coronavirus on the test date, or, you know, has some other extenuating circumstance, or maybe their class isn't to Units 1 through 5 yet. Maybe they did them in the opposite order. Like, there are different circumstances that the College Board is giving you the makeup test, but I just recommend taking the test like most of the other human geographers and just taking it on May 12th. But you guys might have your own opinions about that, and I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to help you along and maybe give you some tips. So if you have any more questions about the exam specifically, put them in the chat or ask a question section, and then I will start answering some questions that we've gotten already. So let's see. There is one question. Kathit, I really hope I pronounced your name right. If you want to put the pronunciation in the chat, I'll make sure to get it right next time or when you ask something. Katit. Okay, Katit. Yep. Yay. Okay. So in the Ask a Question section, Katit asked, do you recommend any resources or tips for getting a 4 on the AP Hug exam? 1, Fiveable. Watching these streams, asking your questions. You can also, your teachers will probably be doing review activities online. If they post an optional assignment that helps you review for the exam, honestly, just like do it. Like, even though it's like an optional assignment, you might have a lot of other work. If you really want to do well in the exam, do like your optional review assignments, do some extra reading outside of class. I don't recommend like rereading your textbook cover to cover like you would for the class. Instead, I would recommend reading some of, let me make myself bigger. Maybe reading some of the ASAP Human Geography book. If you've ever watched one of my Q&A streams or the Prepping for the Exam stream, I love this book. Like, I am passionate about this book. This book is awesome. It has everything you need to know for the exam. It has nice pictures, diagrams. It tells you only what you need to know. It doesn't tell you anything extra. It doesn't have case studies or vocab. It doesn't have things to memorize like you would in a textbook. It's more of an easy to read format, and it's just really much nicer than rereading your textbook. So there are also, if you Google resources for the AP Human Geography exam and you find some things that look nice, you should be fine. He also asked, how was the AP Hug exam for you? Well, honestly, I walked out of the AP Hug exam. I was like, oh crap, these FRQs, like I kind of like just used a lot of vocab words on some of them. Like I wasn't sure exactly what I was writing, but I think I kind of answered them and got the gist a little bit. But I felt really strong about the MCQ section, the multiple choice. But don't let that discourage you guys, because like this year with the FRQs, there has to be a way for somebody to get a 5 or a 4 or a 3. And they're not going to make it to where like one person in the world gets a 5. Like there's going to be ways that you can do well on this exam without checking every single point on the rubric. While you want to try to do that, it might not be possible. I mean, sometimes you just can't, you know? So make sure you're putting any AP Human Geography questions in the chat. But back to answering this question, the AP Hug exam for me honestly felt fine, and I came out of it a lot less confident, but you know, that's usually how us teens act. Like we're confident on the inside, but not on the outside. So this year's exam is going to be a lot different for you guys. It's a lot shorter. It's only one section. So my experiences don't really necessarily correlate to what your experience is going to be, but yeah, I'll just leave it there. Yeah. Okay. So if anybody has any other questions, I'll take those now. And if you don't have any questions, Katit says, what did I get? Well, I walked out of the exam thinking I got a 3 or 4 just because like I wasn't sure about my FRQs, but then I did end up actually getting a 5. On July 5th when I checked my College Board account. Yep, and don't make me think of that. Don't make you think of me like a robot or something. Like I'm a normal person. I have a social life. Like I don't want to be in quarantine like this, like everybody else is. Like I like not staring at an AP Human Geography textbook for a long time, but really like just learning the concepts, being able to apply them, and like learning examples in real life, like thinking of hypothetical examples, like that really helped me to do well on the exam. That's basically it. Okay, so if nobody else has any other, like anybody can put human geography questions, like I don't care who it is, if you've seen me talk every time, if you still have questions, I will answer them, don't worry. But I do want to do something with our time. So if you have, okay, Mary says, since we have a month until the exam, how much time a day would you recommend studying a day? Okay, so what I recommend doing, give me a few seconds to formulate this in my head while I take a sip of water Don't get dehydrated, guys. Drink water inside. You can still get dehydrated inside. Okay. Here's like a tentative plan for you here. Let me actually just type this out on a slide or something. Okay. Let me type this out on a slide so you can take like a picture of it or something when I'm done typing. Okay. Here's like a really tentative, like just I came up with this in my head study plan. So let's just say this is every week before the exam. So I'm assuming that like you guys are getting assignments from your teachers on like Mondays, you're doing your work throughout the week, maybe doing like 1 class a day or something, maybe doing 2 classes a day. So the first thing that I'm going to say is you don't need to spend a ton of time studying on the weekend, especially since we're learning from home right now. Honestly, I would spend like the least time studying over the Saturday, Sunday time frame. I would honestly just like spend time studying during the week, like in between going to my teacher's office hours and classes and things like that. Like, it's not that important to spend all of your weekend that you should be using to rest on studying for AP Human Geography. So here we go. I'll share the URL to the slideshow in a minute when I'm done typing this out. Cut it. So like sometime during the week. So let's just start with Monday. I would say, how about we spend like 15 minutes. Remember, you don't have to like stick to the study plan. This is just something I'm coming up with right now. 15 minutes reading the ASAP book. If you don't have that, you spend 15 minutes Googling resources for AP Hug. And then, look, Fiveable has an article about this. Maybe I helped write this. Don't know. But you can see that there's some resources like Fiveable. They published the ASAP Human book. Wonder why that's so close to the top. Maybe using Mr. Trednick's site, looking at some of his things. There's also the AMSCO book if you use that for school. That's not bad for review. So, like, a lot of teachers will publish their resources for free here. So you can look and see geography classes, AP Human Geography. You can roll down. There are some test materials. Oh, here's the AP test review. There's some models, a vocab list. Like, just to start with, like, just spend Monday reviewing like 15 minutes of just like reading a book, the prep book, 15 minutes finding something online, reading like a PDF, you know, that sort of thing. Tuesday, I'm only going to tell you to spend like 15 to 20 minutes a day on something. 15 minutes studying vocab. So when I say studying vocab, I mean like you find a good Quizlet or you find a Quizlet for each unit that you like. That's not the one that's just from your textbook. Don't use a Quizlet that your teacher like gave you for your textbook for your vocab quizzes. Don't just use that one. Use like a new one. Use something that might have slightly different vocab words where one of the words is changed in a phrase or something like that. And also, don't just study, like, don't just do brute memorization of the vocab word. Think about ways you can apply it too. Like, think about if the vocab word is nation, for example, in political geography. You can think about the application of a nation. What is a nation? Well, I can think about different cultures, different groups of ethnic people, you know, think about it that way. Don't just study the definition, study what the concept actually means. So if you think about state, you could think about, United States of America is a state, Brazil is a state, Mali is a state, Iran is a state. Think about the application, not just the definition. That's one of the biggest mistakes you can make when you're studying for the AP Hug exam is just thinking about the definition and thinking that'll get you like all of your points. Like you need to have the application down. Like that's the main thing about the vocab. There's a ton of vocab in this course, which good, bad, neutral for you, whatever. You just need to think about the application of the vocab. Don't worry about memorizing the definition if you know how to use the definition. If you know what I'm saying, like if you understand that. And then Wednesday, you know what? It's hump day. It's the middle of the week. Take a break. You know, you can put the break on any day. You can substitute anything. Like you can switch around the days. Like I don't care. You can like take a picture and immediately after the stream trash it from your phone. Like, I don't care. I'm doing this to help you. If you don't want it, that's perfectly fine. If you want to switch around the days, won't bother me at all. Okay. And then on Thursday, maybe spend 15, this might take a little bit longer on Thursday. Oh, no. Okay. I'm sorry. That was not what I wanted to do. Technical difficulties yet again. So on Thursday, maybe go to the College Board website. And then, or I'm sorry, you don't need to Google that. Google AP Hug released FRQs. And then try to go to, click on any of the years, like click on 2015, for example. And then after you click on the 2015 FRQ, try to scroll down and find questions that have like 1 or 2 stimuli, like I was talking about, that are going to be on the real exam. So like, and then find the questions with stimuli. After you find a question or two that you want to look at, I don't honestly recommend, like at this point, like we're still about 33 days away from the AP Hug exam. So you don't need to be writing down your whole answer to this FRQ, but really just think about like, what vocab words could I use to answer this FRQ? What examples could I use? What real life or hypothetical examples? Both set. Please excuse my spelling. And then after you have a few ideas, just, try to think, do you think that this might actually get points on the exam? Do you think that this might actually work as an answer that I could use if this was a question on my exam? How much do I actually know about this example that I'm talking about? Are there any examples that directly relate to the vocab words that I'm saying? Just think about things like that. And then when you do that, you can go after that, check the rubric, and see if you were right. Like, you don't have to write out a whole response on notebook paper right now. You don't have to type up a whole Google Doc yet. But, you kind of just want to focus on knowing that you can answer it and you will be able to answer it, but you need to spend your time answering it right now. It's not that important. But when you get closer to the exam, like maybe starting in, let's just say 3 weeks. Let's say 2 weeks, actually. We're not that far away from the exam, 5 weeks away. Starting in 2 weeks, write down your whole answer. Write down your whole paragraph. Like, starting in 2 weeks from now, that means you'll have, like, I think it's 3.5 weeks before the exam. So then you need to start writing your answers down in paragraph form. Honestly, looking at these practice FRQs and studying them is going to be one of the biggest study tips you can have, because with that, you're really going to actually be preparing for this specific AP Human Geography exam. You're not going to be reviewing content. You're not going to be creating a study plan. You're not going to be just studying like you would for class. You're actually practicing the application that you would try to use on this exam, something that you're actually going to use directly on May 12th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to get a 4 or a 5 on your AP Human Geography exam. And then Friday, maybe spend 15 minutes reviewing what you did that week. So if I spent 15 minutes reading the ASAP book, and let's just say I randomly picked page, let's not pick that page, that's a bad page to start on. Let's say I randomly started on page 50. This is where I flipped to when I opened the book. And then I spent 10 to 15 minutes reading, and I got all the way to page 88. So I learned about population And then I also learned about religion in those pages. So on Friday, what I recommend doing is take out a piece of notebook paper or open a Google Doc on your laptop, a Microsoft Word, and start writing down things that you learned this week about culture, religion, and then things you learned this week about population. So for population, I could write down, push and pull factors for migration. For population, I could also write, define that word. Think of an example push or pull factor. So Friday, let's say 20 minutes, because it's like a culminating activity type thing. Let's spend 20 minutes reviewing what you did. And like my handwriting is like cursive, it looks like I'm a founding father and I wrote the Constitution, if you can actually see my screen. But, make sure that you're, reviewing what you did. And maybe when you're studying vocab on Tuesday, work on the units that you read on Monday. That's a good tip too. 15 minutes studying vocab that you learned about on Monday. And then Saturday, Sunday, 15-minute activity of your choice. So with that, you could go reread the ASAP book. You could learn some more vocab. You can add some more to your notebook sheet of paper. And really, the most important part of Friday is that you actually write something that you're going to keep and that you can use. Because when you're writing all this review stuff down, if it's like really short, condensed, like it's using a ton of abbreviations, that's good. That means that on your open note AP Human Geography exam on May 12th, you can use these notes that you've taken from your week. So maybe if instead of doing the 20-minute writing it down on Friday, you want to do it on Saturday or Sunday, when maybe you've learned a little bit more, then you can definitely try that. You can do whatever you think works for you. What I recommend is I would just say, try this for a week. But then I would also say, try that study plan if you want to for a week. But then after that, do what works for you. If it worked, perfect, do it. If it didn't work, try something else. It's all good. I'm not going to be offended. I'm not watching you study all the time. It's whatever you want to do. I put a link to the slides that I'm using, and if you scroll all the way to the bottom, it's slide 11 with the study plan, or you can just take a picture right now on the screen if it would load. Perfect. So this is like a really rough draft. Like I came up with this as I was talking to you in my head. Like you saw that this is not a fully fleshed out plan. Like I didn't do this ahead of time. Like I hope that answered your question, Mary. If you use this, yay. If you don't, please, I won't be offended. If you Google study plan and you find something better, use that, like without a doubt. Like I can answer any more AP Human Geography questions right now. Or if you guys don't have any, if you have questions, write them in the chat. But if you specifically, one of the 6 people watching the stream, can you please go over agriculture? Perfect. With the click of a button, we can look at agriculture. So I'm going to do a rough overview of the agricultural geography unit with y'all right now. So what started agriculture? The origins and diffusion of agriculture. This is one of the, standards of learning that you have to learn. It's on the course guide and everything for AP Human Geography. You need to know all of these things that I'm about to talk about, definitely. I'm not saying there will be an agricultural geography FRQ in your exam, but I'm saying there hasn't been one in 4 years, so I'm predicting that there will be an agricultural geography FRQ on your exam. That's just my speculation, though. I don't work for College Board. I don't make the decisions. Trevor Packer doesn't call me up every time he needs me to make a choice. That's just my prediction. There will be something about agricultural geography. That's my prediction. Okay, so the origins and diffusion of agriculture. People believe I'm going to make myself bigger just so I can do hand motions and stuff like that. Okay, people believe that agriculture started one of 2 ways. So the first way is that agriculture started in Mesopotamia in the Fertile Crescent. Let me pull up the picture because this will work a lot better. Where is Mesopotamia? So people believe that agriculture started, oh my, that is not a picture, that is a thumbnail. People believe that agriculture started right around here in ancient Mesopotamia. Both theories say that agriculture started in Mesopotamia. So this used to be the Fertile Crescent. And what happened, when you think of Mesopotamia in that area, you're thinking of the Middle East. That's a desert. How could they farm there? Like, that doesn't make sense. Well, it didn't used to be a desert. It used to be a really fertile piece of land where people could farm and plow crops, and there was really fertile soil, which is why they call it the Fertile Crescent, because as you can see, it kind of has the shape of a crescent-ish thing. I didn't choose the name. If they'd let me choose a name, I would have called it something else, but, you know. Again, ancient historians didn't ask me for my opinion. So, in ancient Mesopotamia, they started farming. Both theories say that agriculture did start in Mesopotamia, in this Hearth. But then you break off. The second theory, so the first theory says that agriculture started in Mesopotamia and just diffused from there. So it went in all directions. It went east, it went southeast, it went all the way to Americas, it went to, where else? Oh, it went north. The first theory of origins of agriculture says that all agriculture has diffused from Mesopotamia. There was one Hearth of agriculture, and it was Mesopotamia. So the second theory, which is the more widely accepted theory, says that there were multiple Hearths of agriculture. If I could find a picture that I really like, that would be great. But it does not look like I'm going to. So we're going to have to settle for this picture up here that I don't really love, but, you know, it's something. So, okay. Oh, this picture's really blurry and I hate it. So these are some of the major Hearths of agriculture. The second theory says, yeah, agriculture did start in Mesopotamia in 10,000 BC when the Neolithic Revolution happened. But the theory also says that there was a Hearth of agriculture in China, and then there was also one over here, and then there was also one in Peru, and then there was with the brain fart, with the Inca in Peru, and then it also started with the Aztecs and the Mayans in Mesoamerica, in Central America, right here, where Mexico is now. So the second theory of agriculture said agriculture had 6 independent Hearths, and none of them were connected, and agriculture diffused smaller than the first theory all the way around those areas, and agriculture went up from Mexico to North America, went south down here to the tip of South America, it went from Mesopotamia to Africa, China spread around the whole Asian continent, you know. The second theory says 6 independent Hearths, and the first theory just says that there was one right here. And everything started there. And so that was the first agricultural revolution, the Neolithic Revolution that I said earlier. That's when agriculture started. In Mesopotamia, both theories of the diffusion of agriculture agree that agriculture started in Mesopotamia around 10,000 BCE, when somebody figured out that they could take the seed from some plant they found in a forest or in a field, put it in the ground, give it some water, and we can grow crops. So before that, everybody was nomadic, and everybody moved around all the time. Nobody had one place of residence. Nobody had an address. Nobody had homes. There was nothing like that. But then the first agricultural revolution really started the growth of cities. Ancient Mesopotamia had Babylon, which was one of the historians regard as the first big city of the world. So that's what happened in the first agricultural revolution. People learned to put seeds in the ground and move with animals, and then they got to stay in one place. They got to have cities. Now, the second agricultural revolution happened a lot more recently. Not recent in most of your eyes, but, you know, compared to 10,000 BC, it was recent. The second agricultural revolution happened because of the Industrial Revolution. The second agricultural revolution was mainly focused on putting technology into agriculture. Now, by that, when we put technology into agriculture, that means using things like the plow to make agriculture quicker. It means using machines to make agriculture quicker, to make it to where there aren't as many people working in fields as there are as few people and there are more machines and more automation doing the work. And so with that, you have there's less land needed for farming because we have more innovation and people who are able to use the concepts that they learn. But also with the second agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution, we got more ideas about agriculture, not just machines and technology. We got ideas in our technology. So what that means is we had things like crop rotation and intercropping, where we learned that we could put multiple crops in the same field and it would make the soil better for agriculture in the future. We also learned that we could put trees in between crops and it would allow the crops to grow for longer and get bigger, just grow to be bigger. But then the Green Revolution came along. This guy named Norman Borlaug said that, Michaela asked what year was the second agricultural revolution. It was in the 19th century, the 1800s. There's no one specific year. And really, in human geography, you never have to memorize specific dates. There are like one, maybe two exceptions to this, but you really don't have to memorize years and dates. You just kind of have to know like the time period. So for this, you could say the second agricultural revolution was in the late 17 or 1800s. And also, while I'm on the not talking note, I just put a big blue button on the bottom of the screen, and if you click on it, it'll take you to all of the Fiveable resources for the Unit 5 Agriculture unit with slides and replays and videos about agriculture. There's also some trivia. Is there a study guide yet? Nope, we're working hard on publishing a study guide. And I think I'm going to be doing that this afternoon. So, okay. I've made slideshow bigger so you guys can see it. I'm sorry. So the Green Revolution happened when a guy named Norman Borlaug came around in Mexico and Asia, and he was like, we're using way too much land for agriculture. This is like not giving us enough food. There's a growing population. We need to be growing more food. And he basically said, what if I take these crops into my lab and I change their genetics and I change their makeup to make it to where they have higher yields and they're resistant to weather and they're resistant to crop famine. So basically with the Green Revolution, we got things like pesticides, GMOs, and we got the type of farming that we use today, the commercial farming in a small area that gives us big yields. So the Green Revolution is really about today's modernization of agriculture. It's about GMOs and pesticides, feeding the growing population. And I did a specific video on the revolutions of agriculture and the history of agriculture in Unit 5 called Agricultural History and Revolutions. That is on that link that I posted if you scroll down in the video section. And then in agriculture, we also had the Columbian Exchange. The Columbian Exchange happened, well, it started happening in 1492 when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. That's not a date you need to memorize, but it's just something to know. So the Columbian Exchange started when Christopher Columbus sailed the Atlantic Ocean and found America. So the Columbian Exchange is just the movement of crops, animals, and diseases from Europe to North America, or to all of the Americas, to South America, North America, the Caribbean. That's oceanic, which means going between oceans, but going between continents using the ocean. Encounters. That's when Europeans came in contact with Native Americans. That's when farming really started with different perspectives in different parts of the world. The Columbian Exchange moved the crops and animals from one part of the world to another part of the world. Does anybody know? Okay, fun fact. With the Columbian Exchange, what animal was brought from Europe to the Americas, and it basically changed the way that Americans live their lives? Does anybody know what animal came from Europe to the Americas and changed the lives? Yes, Mary's right. It's a horse. Mary and Michaela, good job. Pigs actually came from Asia and Africa, and there were different breeds of them, and there were actually some in South America too, so that one's kind of contested. But the horse definitely changed the lives of Native Americans and colonizers in the North America area. It allowed them to move between the continents and actually travel. Before the Columbian Exchange, there was no movement between North America and South America, and the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Incans and the Mississippi people. None of them knew each other. They never traded with each other until we had horses. This allowed people to move around and grow crops in a field but live in another place. So the horse really changed the lifestyle of Americans from the Columbian Exchange. Now, the practice of agriculture. So basically, I went over most of these in talking about the second agricultural revolution, but you don't need to know most of these, but when you think about the practice of agriculture, you realize you need to know people plant seeds in the ground, they create, and then they create the crops, and then they sell the crops. They eat the crops, or they, use the crops for fuel. So the practice of agriculture just means that there are different ways that people grow crops. Not every field looks the same. Not every field has the same crops. Agriculture looks different around the world, and it even looks different between farms that are so close to each other. We think of Iowa as a state that grows a lot of corn, but we also know that other places in America grow corn. It's not just one place that grows corn. So there are different fields that have some corn, and some fields have more soy than corn. Some fields have a mix of corn and lettuce or carrots or other types of vegetables that I can't think of right now. So there are many different plants that we grow in different places, and agriculture isn't just plants, it's also raising animals and making sure that we have, animals to eat for food, for meat. Subsistence versus commercial agriculture. This one is another big theme of the agricultural geography unit. So subsistence agriculture is what happens in remote places of South America and Africa. Subsistence agriculture is when you just grow enough food for your family to eat, and maybe a little bit extra just to have as like leftovers or for your grandparents or in-laws or something like that. It's mainly just about feeding yourself. Commercial agriculture, on the other hand, is what happens in most of the developed world. It's what happens in America, in Western Europe, in East Asia. So commercial agriculture is when the farmers grow way too much food, but then they take that extra food and then they go sell it at the market, or they go sell it at Kroger, Walmart, Publix, all the grocery stores. The farmers sell their food. Commercial agriculture is just when you sell whatever you make in your agricultural pursuits. Terrace farming is usually seen with subsistence agriculture. Terrace agriculture is when you use the contour of the land, which just means the hills and the mountains and like there's different steps up. That's when you use the landscape, the physical landscape that's already there to farm. Slash and burn agriculture is happening a lot in Brazil and Bolivia and Peru, the northern part of South America, north of Argentina. Where it's a lot of rainforest, the heavy Amazon. Slash and burn agriculture is when I plant this crops in a field for a few years. Usually it's 1 to 3 years. And basically after I'm done, I take my big machete and I slash all of the trees and all of the crops that aren't growing anymore, like the soil's not fertile. So I slash everything with my big machete, or that's the picture that I like to think of. Like you take your big machete out and you slash all the vines of the Amazon and you slash the crops off the off the floor, off the ground, and then you burn the area. And really, you think of like burning something up, like burning the forest is a bad thing, but it's not all bad. Slash and burn agriculture is what returns a lot of nutrients to the soil. So when rainforest, your soil is not nutrient rich and you can't farm in one place for too long, but with slash and burn agriculture, you can burn up the crops, and basically the crops that are dead can actually give the soil nutrients to allow more people to farm in that field like in another year. And shifting cultivation usually happens with slash and burn and subsistence agriculture, because the shifting cultivation is when you move from one field to another, or you plant different crops in different fields. It's just basically having to do with moving around. In this And the next topic, GMOs, goes more with commercial agriculture than subsistence. Commercial agriculture has found GMOs really promising lately because that means that we can grow a lot of crops, we can have high yields in a small amount of land, and we can feed the growing population of the world and the starving population of the world, people who can't afford to buy food. But if we grow more food and it's more productive, we can sell the food for cheaper in places like Africa. So GMOs are just when I take the favorable traits or the genetics of two crops and I put them together and I have one big, super, really mutant crop. And basically, almost everything that you eat is a GMO. I don't care if the label says organic at the store. Seeds fly in the wind, they move with water streams. Nothing is really organic anymore unless you commit to growing it yourself and you buy the seeds. Most things that you eat aren't actually organic, even if they have that big green sticker that says organic certified. You're better off saving your money and just buying the genetically modified stuff because that's what you're eating anyways. So, GMOs basically came from the Green Revolution. They feed a lot of people. They have high yield crops with not a lot of land. We're getting into our last few topics of agricultural geography. Environmental determinism versus possibilism. This is more of a one concept, but I wanted to include this here because this is really one of the only things that is really glossed over in Unit 1 that can, they're kind of important vocab words in human geography. Environmental determinism just means, Michaela said something. She said environmental determinism, the environment determines what humans can do in a certain area. Environment places limits on human activity. Yes, it's exactly right. That is the definition of environmental determinism. Class for Michaela. All right. So, but on the opposite side, does anybody besides Michaela, or if Michaela wants to keep answering the questions, does anybody know what environmental or possibilism is? Does anybody know what possibilism is? You can say it in less words than what she said, but anybody know what environmental possibilism is? Mary says, possibilism is what we do to the environment. Yeah, it's more of humans decide what to do to the environment. So it's kind of just the opposite. It's kind of opposites. You kind of need to know them. Agriculture is all about using the environment and growing food and stuff. So that's kind of important. And then pastoral nomadism is basically a form of subsistence agriculture where I take my family and my cattle and I roam around. I don't live in one place. I probably live in a hut that I keep in the backpack on my back while I walk around and farm, and I don't live in one place for very long. It's basically being a nomad, living around and taking my animals with me and walking across the Ural Mountains. Usually you find pastoral nomadism in places like Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, places near the Ural Mountains in Central Asia, also sometimes in Mongolia and northwest China. And then plantation agriculture, just about the opposite of pastoral nomadism. Plantation agriculture, usually in history, we think of plantation agriculture as when some big rich guy or some European has a lot of slaves and they, do a lot of work. But what plantation agriculture really means in today's society is when I have a lot of things that I'm growing in one place. I have a really big plot of land with a lot of farmers, and I grow a lot of different crops. So plantation agriculture is just when I have a lot of different crops. In some parts of the world, yes, there still are slaves that are using plantation agriculture, but slaves are not a hallmark of plantation agriculture. Slaves don't have to be somewhere for it to be plantation agriculture. Now, since your exam is going to be with the Stimuli FRQ, and we've just reviewed agricultural geography, I wanted to go through and just look at something. So let's pretend that you're in the exam and you get these two stimuli for your FRQ, if it would work. You have these two things. What do you do first? Does anybody in the chat want to tell me what they would do when they look at these pictures, besides cry, be scared, and don't know what the heck they're asking about? Can anybody describe what's happening in either of these pictures? Okay, yes, you would analyze them. So you would look at them, decide what's going on in these pictures. So let's analyze them together. Can anybody tell me what's going on in either of these pictures? Think about the places they're showing, yeah, like the countries. Okay, so you can definitely look at the countries in the graph on the left side. Can anybody identify what's going on in the picture on the right? Because honestly, on your AP exam, you could get just a very vague picture like this one, and you're going to have to figure out what the heck it is and where the heck it could happen. So I have two people saying step farming. Yes, so step farming is just another word for terrace farming or trace farming. Like, there are a ton of different vocab words. That's why in the study plan, I recommended using a Quizlet that's not the one that you've used with your textbooks. You can have exposure to different forms of vocab words. But the AP exam isn't going to say no to step farming when the answer is terrace farming. Like, there are two vocab words that are very similar. The textbook's choice is really the difference. So we have some terrace farming here, but then on the left we have a graph with some, increased grain production. So can anybody come up with, like, I'm creating this FRQ, like, I just found these two stimuli online. Can anybody think of what this question might ask you to do? Can anybody come up with, like, part A, B, C, D? Can anybody come up with, like, a part? Like, identify the region where there's the most grain production. Identify the region where the picture on the right might be exaggerated, like things like that. Can anybody come up with what they might ask you? With what they might ask you on the AP exam? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So Kahit says, how might this region have an increase in grain production? So yeah, you could pick a region. What's the increase? Why the increase? Perfect. Analyzing the first stimulus. Mary says maybe positive and negative of step farming. Sure, perfect. We have an A and we have a B. They both look at each of the stimuli. Perfect. But then with the C, wow, I've just got people left and right here. Michaela says, this is a perfect C comparing the two. How does the picture on the right explain the increase in one of the regions on the graph? So I want to reword that a little bit, just because I picked the FRQ, so I kind of want to have my own say. But good job, Kadit, Mary, Michaela. Your questions could be a literal FRQ on the exam. Those could be things the AP exam could ask you. But I want to reword what Michaela said. So basically, how could the question wouldn't say step farming. How could the picture on the right have influenced a change or a continuity in this graph? So let's see. Terrace farming. Terrace or step farming. Terrace or step farming doesn't really happen in commercial agriculture. It doesn't happen a ton in developed countries. So I'm going to give away some things about this. Okay, so terrace farming is mostly subsistence agriculture. Here we have a graph that's talking about the Green Revolution. If you already got that, I'm sorry I didn't ask. I just kind of wanted to go through this right now really quickly. So we have this graph showing as time goes on, the increase in grain production goes up. We know that East Asia and Latin America are the two biggest places that were impacted by the Green Revolution. That's where they grew the crops. That's where Norman Borlaug helped in Mexico, Latin America, and in China and Vietnam, East Asia. So we can see the Green Revolution in this graph, which is really about commercial, intensive agriculture. But then we see terrace farming over here, which is just a form of subsistence agriculture. So when I was thinking about this FRQ, I was going to ask, like, how can the picture on the right explain one of the trends in the graph? So I would be looking for an answer that terrace farming can happen in sub-Saharan Africa or Southeast Asia, where there has been less impact by the Green Revolution. Sub-Saharan Africa could have terrace farming or step farming because there's no Green Revolution, because terrace farming is a form of subsistence agriculture. It's going to be in a place where there's less GMOs, less increasing grain production. Like, you have to think about it that way. Like, it's not explaining an increase, it's explaining why something's not changing. So Michaela, yeah, you had it right, but just wanted to change a few words there. Just being finicky, just like the AP exam. All right, so I don't really have a lot of time, so I can answer a few more questions. I'm going to leave the study plan up here right now, but I can just answer questions. Like, I don't have time to go over another whole unit since I only have 1 or 2 more minutes left in the stream with you guys. Thank you all for coming, but what other questions do you have? If you don't have any other questions, then you can go. Have a great day, guys. As always, thank Fiveable and make sure that you're, giving yourself the self-love that you need while you're staying at home. All right, guys. It doesn't look like there are any questions. I'm still going to be here. If you have questions, put them in the chat, and I'll try to respond to them with words. But I'm going to sign off now, guys. So hope you have a great day. Hope y'all are staying happy, healthy, safe, all of those things. And I hope that you always think Fiveable and make sure that you give yourself the best circumstances possible. Don't just spend time preparing for the AP exam. Also spend time on yourself. Spend time watching Netflix. Oh, also, go to Shreya's stream. If you weren't here earlier, I'm going to post the link in the chat before you leave. But Shreya, one of the other AP Human Geography streamers, had the stream today at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, so it's in just about an hour from now, about the global economy. It's about Unit 7, so it's not going to be on the test, but it's a new bonus stream series about things that aren't going to be on the test that are still in the AP Human Geography curriculum. So make sure you hop over and watch that, but I'm going to go now. As Katit said, peace out.